What's going on, everybody? So it's been a long time since I've been on here. Uh, there has been a little bit of Tigers news lately, and we're going to touch on in this video. But it's been a long time since we did a baseball banter. Mike and I's schedule just has not been able to coincide to get a time to do baseball banter. So I wanted to still get some content out on my channel, just do a baseball banter in general. So I'm joined not by my brother from another mother, my actual brother from the same mother, who usually does Tiger videos with me. Chris, this is the first time on baseball banter in a long time, brother. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's no problem, man. Baseball is around the corner. I'm excited, especially with everything going on with the Tigers this year. I'm ready to see where a few of these free agents sign, but I'm more excited to see where the Tigers season potentially leads this year.
So, as always, we're doing this in a StreamYard. So, if anybody wants to chime in the comments, I'll post a comment on the screen here and we'll discuss that too. Uh, Not a light podcast per se, but a few things that we wanted to touch on basically. So, because we're Tiger homers, obviously, we're going to talk about Colt Keith first. So, the Tigers this weekend made it official that they signed Colt Keith to a 6-year, $28 million extension. The deal after the 6th year has a bunch of escalators that could potentially make this a 9-year, $82 million deal. He has to hit certain performance bonuses. He has to finish like certain spots in MVPs, all-star appearances, whatnot. So, what are your, before we get into the actual workings of the contract and the thought of the potential money he left, what are your thoughts on the contract and them signing Colt Keith before anybody out of all these players that they brought up in the last couple of years?
Yeah, honestly, I thought the press conference thing was kind of weird, considering he's never taken like a major league at bat. I thought that was kind of strange. But I mean, there really hasn't been much news or any major free agents coming. But it's not like he's not like a big deal. I mean, Colt Keith's our top prospect in our farm system, arguably behind Jackson Jobe. Those two could probably swap back and forth. But clearly there's really high praises on this guy to hopefully hit for high average and everything, considering what the press conference and everything led to, if anyone watched it. But I like it. To me, this kind of like the Atlanta Braves do. They just like lock and retain young talent. Again, obviously Colt Keith has never stepped in the major leagues yet, in the major league box or anything like that, but this kid's definitely got the tools. Defense, we don't really know how he's going to do yet. To me, though, too, even though Harris had touched on saying that he's still got to earn his spot out of spring, just because he signed this contract doesn't mean he's going to be guaranteed a spot at second base. So to me, when I see this, I'm like, well, to me, you're going to start him at second regardless. You're going to let him kind of work the kinks out, kind of like what Torkelson did his first year. Hopefully not to that bad of extent the year he had, but to me, it just showed that he's more than likely going to start the team out of spring training, irregardless, in my opinion. But I like it overall, though.
Yeah, you don't go and give somebody that an extension, and the way Colt Keith had made adjustments and the way he had really dominated Double A, and they held him down there for the first half of the season, so Erie would make the playoffs, and then they finally put him up to Triple A. You don't go and dominate Double A, and then I think they purposely left him down there in Triple A because they had an inkling that they were going to make an opening day starter anyway, so they didn't see the point of bringing him up because they kind of thought he was going to be on the big squad come starting next year. But you don't give him this kind of money and not put him as your opening day starter on top of like your other options for that position, whether it's like McKinstry or Ibanez. Like those guys already shown that they're not everyday options, and with where way Colt Keith has made his way through the prospect rankings, the way he's dominated the lower minors, showing his power, showing his plate discipline. He's your starter. Like I don't foresee any which circumstance. I mean, he would have to be like next level bad. And remember, last year in spring, he dominated to the point that AJ Hinch was like, "Hey, there's no matter what this guy does, he's not making the team out of camp. He's going down to Double A, and that's the end of it." And he was hitting like crazy. So it's going to take a lot for him not to make the big squad. Now, what do you think of like all these people saying that young players like this taking an extension is stupid and he's leaving so much money on the table?
Well, they did touch on that in the press conference a little bit. Like some of the reporters had some questions, obviously, about the money portion of it. To me, I mean, look at where he's at. I mean, like I said, he hasn't stepped in the big league, in a big league at bat yet. I mean, to me, if you can secure any kind of money or any type of bag, I mean, like you said, he's going to be a free agent in 2031 or 2032. So if he's really good throughout the first 6 years of his career, obviously he's still going to be in his prime, and he's going to have years left to make that bag on the second part of his career. So, I mean, when you're a young guy like that and you still have no major league experience, and you're ripping it up what you're doing, and the team offers you an extension, it's really hard to say no to that guaranteed money, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's like what the Tigers gave him for the first couple years of his deal, he's not really underpaid. He's going to get paid more than he would in his first couple years of arbitration. Where they saved money was the back half of the arbitration because say like Keith is 3/4 of the player that they think he's going to be. By the back half of arbitration, he's going to be a 15, $16 million a year player if he's, any bit of an all-star or any bit of a couple WAR player. So you're paying him a little bit up front for the first couple years pre-arb, and then you're paying him decent for his first arb year. But the last couple years of arb, you're saving some money on it. And also you got to think, and a lot of people brought this up between his press conference and just a lot of people who cover the Tigers. Colt Keith has not exactly had the healthiest track record to this point. He's had injuries with his arm. He's had injuries with his body. I think like core injuries and whatnot. So I know for sure his arm, he had like shoulder issues, which is why they were putting him at second base to begin with because of the protecting his arm. So this guy is going to get 28 million bucks, regardless if he's a perennial all-star or if he's Brennan Bosch, where he's a flash in the pan and he's done after a couple of years in the big leagues. So I think if you're somebody who's 22 on the precipice of the big leagues, you don't have a clue what your career trajectory can be. You just solely have high expectations. If you're going to go out there, I would take $28 million when I was 22 years old. I would go out there if you don't know how good you're going to be and you're potentially guaranteed up to 9 years already and almost 90 million bucks at 22 years old, and you're going to bet on yourself. And you got to think when that contract ends, he's only going to be 30, 31 years old. So if he's a really good player, he's going to have a chance to get paid again. And if he sucks, he's already going to make his money. So, and the Tigers go out and they lock up a prospect, someone that, Scott Harris has said the whole time, he wants to develop talent and he wants to keep talent. Well, this is technically an Al Avila draft pick because Al Avila did draft him, but I think, he's flourished over the last 2 years under the Harris, Harris regime and Ryan Garco and everything else. So it's cool they locked him up. So if you were Scott Harris and you could lock up another one of these young guys, who would it be and how much?
I'd probably like to try to lock up maybe like a Jackson Joe or like a Jace Jung, considering how those two have performed as well. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, considering what
Say
Keith
Riley
was
Green. Say they were trying to lock up Riley Green right now. 2 years in the big leagues, but injured. What would that contract you think take?
Well, you and I kind of discussed this because you thought it was kind of a little bit too far already in their paths to be talking extension. But with injuries that he's had, I mean, he hasn't even had 100 games in the big leagues yet. With 2 full seasons, he hasn't played 100 games in the big leagues fully. I mean, in any full season, it was like 94 the first season, the 99 the second season. So, I mean, when Riley Green's healthy, I mean, he's a really, really good player. I think contract wise, I think it would be probably kind of similar, maybe like a 6 or 7 year deal, but with those incentives towards the end of it as well, with the club or team options. But I think he would probably go for like 10 or 12 a year, maybe even 15 down the line
Like
through the contract.
with annual average value, you mean like 10 or $12 million?
Probably like a year, he'd probably get between 13 and 15 a year, maybe incentive towards like 20.
So I think right now at this point, with where Riley Green is in his career, it would probably take him. So like here's the thing. A lot of him is we've seen his talent in small intervals because like he came up, lit the world on fire, struggled, played better, got hurt. last year, came up, struggled, was absolutely amazing, got hurt, was good, got hurt, season over. So it's kind of hard because, like, I think we could all agree the best player on the Tigers coming into this year, it's Riley Green, and I don't think it's particularly close when it comes to all-around player, hitter, defender. There's nobody on the team that's as complete a player as he is. Because, like, sure, there's guys that are better defensively than him. Like Parker Meadows is a better defensive center fielder, but Parker Meadows isn't going to hit like Riley Green. Like, you agree?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it's like you have all this potential and all this talent, but you have someone that has been able to stay healthy. So I think, like, right now, if you were going to try to buy out like Riley Green the rest of his contract and give him like 6 years, I think he's going to bet on himself to be healthy for a few more years. So you would honestly have to overpay him and probably make him between an 18 and $24 million player a year to make him sign that kind of an extension. And I don't know, like, offhand, like what like someone like Michael Harris is making when they extended him after only half the season for his AAV, but I can almost guarantee you it's not that much to compare to like what Riley Green would take. Now, like, so I was listening to the Days of Roar podcast, and I really don't like them, but they were talking about another player that I wanted your thoughts on this, Max Clark.
Mm.
Yeah, so he's got 8 years, 72 million. So it would take something like that to get Riley Green to agree to something. What do you think of Max Clark, signing Max Clark? Because he's not a Boris player either, and Torkelson's a Boris player.
Thinking like already signing him to a long-term deal.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he just did some interview thing on YouTube with some people in New York and some like apartment building or whatever that I had seen. He did talk about his failures and how it kind of humbled him real quick because, like he said, like he hit like over 600 in high school and he wasn't used to like any failures. So the rookie ball kind of humbled him a little bit. But I mean, the kid's got the tools. It's just whether the development team in place that we have in Detroit that Harris has put forth. I mean, look at all the prospects we have now showing up. So I believe in our development team now than when Avila was running it. I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, if you give him a similar deal, kind of Colt Keith, that's a no harm, no foul thing right there.
It's kind of crazy. Like, Al Avila was so bad as a general manager, but you go look at the players on this roster that they expect to win with, who drafted them all.
Yeah. Well, just the player development wasn't there.
Yeah, it wasn't
the
there
player
at all.
development was terrible. So, I mean, you've always said that he drafted talent, and clearly that showed. So,
Yeah, it just his player development was absolutely dog shit. He couldn't get the players once he get them in their system. Like, I remember Matt Manning talking about that. Like, he was asking about pitch mix, and the Tigers couldn't even help him with it because their player development was so bad. All right, last thing about the Tigers, because I want your thoughts on this. Last thing about the Tigers, and we're going to move on to other teams. Casey Mize, Tarek Skubal, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson. You can keep 2. Who are you keeping?
Tarek Skubal and Riley Green.
Okay. Because it's going to come down to that. In the next couple years, you got to think Skubal and Mize have one more year service time than Green and Torque because they came up in 2020. Green and Torque were 21. So Mize and Skubal are coming closer to free agency than you think. And this is year 3 already. So they're halfway through for Green and Torque. So it's going to come a time to where it's like extensions are coming faster than people realize. And this was been my point for the last couple of years. It's like, they're starting, all these players are starting to infiltrate the big leagues. But if you don't like start taking a step forward, you're going to miss your window because these guys are going to be going for free agents. Now, mind you, these dudes, they start to perform, and a lot of what we're talking about is hyperbole and promise because, like, Torque, whatever, had 30 home runs, but, like, Green has been hurt, Skubal's been hurt, Mize has been hurt. But it's going to come to that point to where, like, these guys start balling out. You're not going to be able to keep 2. I mean, and look what, like, the Astros, like, let Correa go, let Springer go. So it's going to come to that point. All right. So enough with the Tiger talk. Let's actually move on to other things. So we actually got the man himself, the kid with the golden locks, Mike fucking Hewitt, on here to actually chime in. I would love to do a banter with Mike soon. It's just been hard to make our schedules correlate. So you didn't even know about this till I had mentioned this to you earlier. The Angelos are finally selling off the Baltimore Orioles. You want to talk about a family with dysfunction between Peter and John? They've tried to sue one another for like control of the team, and the Angelos have been notoriously cheap with this Orioles squad. And I kind of wanted to chime in something, but I want to get your opinion first. So the Orioles are finally going to be sold to a group, the Carlisle Group, excuse me. David Rubenstein's like this. I think he's like this philanthropist guy. He's like a billionaire. They're selling him at $1.725 billion. So for the Angelos here to keep crying poor, $1.725 billion is definitely not a bad payday to get out of that franchise. So, what do you think about the Orioles finally being sold out of nowhere, essentially?
I think it's probably, if you're the Angelos, it's probably a good time to do it, considering you're selling them when a team's at up the highest that they've been in a while, and they have all those top prospects and everything still. I think there's a good time to do it now, considering where they're at. I don't know really anything about like the Orioles and how like the Angelos were and all that as much as you do, so I don't really have like too much of an opinion. I mean, it looks like the guy the Carlisle Group, like they're from Baltimore and stuff like that, so that's cool. Hopefully it gives them more money to spend, I guess. But I don't really have any more of an opinion than that.
Cal Ripken Sr. is a part of that, or Cal Ripken Jr. is a part of the
Yeah,
group.
you're right. You were telling me that.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I said, I think if there's any time to sell that team, it's coming off the season they had, especially with the side that it's looking up for them, that has looked up for them. So
I think this has kind of been in the works, but nobody's known about it. Because if you think about it, last year the Orioles win even more games than they did the year prior when they came out of nowhere and just absolutely, and they didn't want to add at the deadline. Remember, they stood pat and they're like, we're going to open up the checkbook, we're going to spend. They didn't spend last offseason either, and then they ended up winning 101 games. And now they're coming into this season with very minor moves made, like Craig Kimbrell, who's probably been one of their only pitching additions. They haven't done much of their starting rotation. It was rumored they were in on Dylan Cease, and it's yet to happen. But I think now that you look at this sale of this team, it kind of makes sense why the Angelos have been, they're shitty owners to begin with. I mean, like they wouldn't even travel their radio announcers for like they finally did this year after a couple of years just to save money because they're that cheap. But I think it kind of makes sense now looking at it why they weren't trying to spend on any free agents, because they knew that they were trying to get out of this team and they were about to sell it. So they're like, why are we going to add payroll and keep adding to our financial commitments and when we're about to get out of this team? So maybe now that they got different ownership group in there, they'll actually start to spend because this ownership group wants to add onto a team that I think they're like one of the first teams of all time that have had Baseball America's top rated prospect in the big. They've had a graduation followed by another number one overall prospect. It was like Adley, then Gunnar, and now Jackson Holiday.
Yeah.
So it's insane how this team has just stacked and drafted like to keep their system that deep. Because usually, like, you lose your top prospect in your system, if you're not super, super deep, but you're kind of being held up by upper echelon prospects, your system falls to the middle of the pack or ladder of the pack because like you lost such high end prospects. And now it's like to stack these kind of prospects, and Jackson Holiday is most likely going to be there this year as a teenager. It's insane. But I'm happy, if you're an Orioles fan, because like I said, the Angelos, like there was so much bitterness between that family, between I think John and Peter. They were suing one another. It was just a fucking disaster there. So for them to get out of there, it's a good thing. Hopefully they add, because honestly, like that's a team you should spend money on, and that's a team you should add to because like they're so fucking good. And for them to go into this year with this kind of pitching rotation,
it's pretty bad. It's sad.
Yeah, like any other owner would be like, imagine if that was Mike Ilitch back in the day, and the Tigers had
I
101
mean,
wins.
even though like the Cardinals have like the oldest rotation in the MLB right now, at least they still went out and tried
Yeah,
and got like some
yeah.
pitching.
Like I don't expect them to go get like Blake Snell or something, but like make like a fucking like a trade or something because they still
Right.
have a bunch of other good prospects behind Jackson Holiday, and it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so let's move on here to the later half of this. Let's talk about some free agents. So, spring training is not super far off of pitchers and catchers reporting. I think it's about 2.5 weeks of pitchers and catchers report. The Dodgers and one other team reports a few days earlier because they're playing in Korea this year. So spring training is right around the corner. So Jordan Montgomery is still not signed. Blake Snell is still not signed. Uh, JD Martinez is still not signed. Justin Turner finally just signed the other day with the Toronto Blue Jays. So if you had to put some of these upper end guys, Josh Hader finally signed too, and Hector Neris did as well. Hader went to the Astros and Neris went to the Cubs. If you had to put these guys on new teams, Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman. So let's go like this. Let's go starting pitchers first, and then position players. We'll do like 6 or 7 guys. What team are you putting Blake Snell on?
I know there was like rumors of like the Yankees potentially landing him.
Yeah,
But
they gave him $150 million deal, and he didn't take it. It said he
yeah,
wants. There's rumor that he wants like $250 million.
yeesh. That's a heck of a contract. I mean, the dude's a hell of a pitcher. I think for Blake Snell, I would love to see the Cincinnati Reds go out and make a move, considering how young that team is and how like he could really help lead that staff with like that Ashcraft dude or Grant, whatever the hell his name
Grant
is.
Ashcraft, yeah.
Grant Ashcraft, Hunter Green. And so you just had Snell to the top of that rotation. I mean, that team was electric last year. I think if you just add, and I thought they were going to go out and get pitching at the deadline, and they didn't. So I think the Reds would be like a really good fit. Probably even like the Giants. I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants tried going after Blake Snell because they try to land everyone and can't really seem to get too many players there. Even
Imagine
though,
next year, like if they got Snell, him and Robbie Ray in that with Logan Webb. That'd be
yeah,
nice.
yeah, that'd be a pretty nasty row. I'm trying to think who else could possibly land him.
What about Jordan Montgomery?
Maybe a homecoming in Texas again. I don't know. I haven't really seen much on his market. Maybe Texas just reaches back out and goes, "Hey, maybe a couple year deal or whatever. Maybe he wants to opt out again. Who knows?"
So I would like to see Blake Snell get his wish and be able to go back to Seattle and pitch in his hometown because that's what he said. But the issue is the Mariners aren't going to spend that kind of money on him.
Well, and
And like,
you got what? You got Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby. I mean, there's 3 there, but you add Snell to that rotation. That's pretty wicked.
yeah, and he would replace Ray. The thing
Yeah.
is like with Snell, the years he's not good, he's not good. The years he's good, he wins the Cy Young. It's like it's kind of hard to give somebody when he's 31 because like they supposedly wants a 9-year deal. You don't want to be paying someone when they're fucking 40 years old. He's probably going to get somewhere in the mid 30s, I would imagine, for AAV. 36, $37 million, when he can't have a middle ground year. It's like, are you going to go out and give somebody a 9-year deal when every year in between their Cy Youngs are absolutely trash? And then he's never had a complete game. The most innings he's ever pitched in a year is 180, and he did it twice in both years that he pitched 180 innings was his Cy Young years. He walks the house. Like, I just don't understand how this guy is going to go out there and try to set his market at this absolutely ludicrous Garrett Cole level value when his seasons in between is just been really bad, and he just walks too many people and doesn't go deep into ball games. Now, I'd like to see him go to Seattle. I think that'd be a cool thing to see him go pitch for his hometown team. I think if Texas wanted to move on from Jordan Montgomery, I think putting Snell in there to replace Jordan Montgomery, and then you'd have Snell, Scherzer, DeGrom, Evaldi as your 1 through 4 would be a really nice rotation. Now, mind you, a lot of injury risk with all of them, but the namesake of it at least plays out. I love your idea about Cincinnati. That would be cool, but
Even
the fact
what about even Baltimore? They need to start. They need some starters now.
I
They have
wish
new
I wish
ownership and everything.
I wish Baltimore, out of those two guys, would go get Jordan Montgomery. Like, get a proven starter. Get somebody to pair with Grayson Rodriguez at the top of your rotation. Like, Jordan Montgomery he's very familiar with the AL East. Moving that wall back absolutely has helped the hell out of all the starting pitchers in Baltimore, like with Bradish and whatnot. He had a good year last year. It's like, you go get like a Jordan Montgomery. He's not going to cost you as much as a Blake Snell. He's going back to the AL East. The Yankees, I think, are out on Jordan Montgomery because they went and got Marcus Stroman. So I don't really see how they would go out make any sense to go get Blake Snell after that because their rotation is pretty much filled. So I don't know. Like I really wish that Baltimore would go get Jordan Montgomery, or like even Cincinnati would go get Jordan Montgomery, because like especially like that Cincinnati team, the Central and the NL Central is just as grabbable as the AL Central is. The division's not that good because the Cardinals are trying to do what they tried to do to make sure that the rotation isn't as dog shit. And I think that little heart to heart that they had with Wilson Contreras after they said he wasn't good enough, they were going to DH him, and then he'd like DH for like a couple weeks, and then afterwards they said he was good the rest of the season. I don't think some shit like's going to happen like that this year. They finally got rid of Tommy Edman out of that thing, and they're trying to solve that clusterfuck of a center of an outfield that they had out there. Who knows on Dylan Carlson and the rest of those guys, but they tried to make it, but it's an older rotation and there's injury risk there. You look at the Cincinnati Reds, it's like they have some pieces in there, but they're just a couple starting pitchers short, and they have a good hitting team. Like Ellie is fucking electric, and Matt McClain is really good, and Jonathan India. Now, mind you, he hasn't been like he was in his rookie year, and there's still been rumors that they're going to trade him. He's still a good player. He's still a good second baseman. They have some dudes on that team. So to go out and get like somebody proven in a division that's weak, I don't know why they haven't done it yet. It doesn't make much sense. So definitively for Montgomery and Snell, where are you putting each guy? One team.
One team apiece.
Yep.
I kind of like your idea with Jordan Montgomery if they don't get Snell. So if Snell doesn't end up going to Baltimore, put Montgomery there, and then throw Snell in Cincinnati. Because I'd really like to see that. That'd be really cool.
Okay. I mean, they have the money to do it, but ownership down here is definitely cheap. That's another shitty ownership group is the Cincinnati Reds. But okay, so let's put some hitters in places. Where's Cody Bellinger going?
Back to the Cubs. I feel like he's going to go back to familiar territory. I don't think whatever he's asking for is there this year. I think teams are like kind of wondering if he can do it again. Some consistency considering how his years were. Mostly inconsistent after his MVP year. So I think they're a little concerned. So they want to see him do it again.
I think the Cubs was the spot he succeeded. He bounced back. He's got to go back.
I was about to say, and he did well there. He played well at Wrigley Field. He played well with the Cubs, and the Cubs are a good team too. They have a nice little
Dansby. When you got Dansby at Cubs Fest calling out saying we want Bellinger back, like, he's important to that team.
Yeah,
he's got to be there. Okay, Matt Chapman.
Tigers, baby, go get him.
Oh, fuck yourself. He's not coming to the Tigers.
I knew you were going to say that. I don't know.
Matt Chapman is not that good. He's a good defender. He's a shitty hitter.
I just wanted to say that to piss you off. We already have enough strikeouts from the guy that would be playing to the left of him if that was the case.
He's so good defensively, but he can't hit.
Yeah. I wouldn't want another swing and miss dude like that, like 170 times a year. Yeah. Let's see. Third baseman. I'm going to say the Angels.
Okay. I mean, they could have another overpriced guy who strikes out a lot to go with Anthony Rendon.
Exactly, because Rendon's never there. He doesn't even want to play baseball anyway.
Where would they put Anthony Rendon then? Rendon plays third. Where would they put Rendon in second?
Cheerleader.
Yeah. I mean, you can't count on him to play more than 45 games anyways. He's trash. Yeah. That's a career that fell so far off. Like he was so good as an at. He's just fucking dog shit now.
I mean, I guess I really just don't know. I'm maybe like I don't know. Go back to Oakland if he wants to go back there. I don't really know their situation, but I mean I don't really know the team's really interested in Chapman. To be honest
His
with you,
market seems really bad.
yeah, because I mean no one in the AL Central is obviously going to get him because there's a lot of teams in the Central that are cutting payroll this year within our division. The NL Central, I mean Pirates got Key Brian Hayes. I don't think he's a fit on the Reds. Brewer. I don't know who the Brewers have at third. I can't think. I don't think they have a. No, wait, that's
They
not.
just signed Reese Hoskins for first.
Yeah, for first. I really don't know where he could end up. I mean, I don't know if he could. I mean, do you think he was? Who do they have at third in Toronto right now? Oh, wait, Turner. They signed Turner. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's more of a first baseman / DH.
Yeah.
Turner can't play that much third anymore. He could. People keep saying he's either going to end up back in Toronto or Chicago. I don't think he's going to get as much money as people think. I think he's going to get barely over what the qualifying offer is.
White Sox?
No, the Cubs.
Cubs? Oh, okay.
Because Jamer's gone.
Okay.
Because Jamer's a Red. Like you got to think about it. The qualifying offer is like $17.5 million, right? He declined it. I don't think Chapman's going to get as many years and as much dollars as people think. I think he's going to probably get 20 or 21 million bucks a year. He's going to sign like a 5-year deal for like a 21 AAV. He's going to have an opt out after 2 years. It's going to be a lot lower because he was hurt last year. He was extremely good in the first month, and then he was dog shit the rest of the way. All he's had is his glove, and he strikes out so much, and he's 31 years old. He does not have as much value in today's modern day game of baseball. Now, 20 years ago, Chapman would have been signed a little bit quicker because of how good he is defensively, and 17 home runs in like 2009, 2008 was a lot more than 17 home runs in a 2023 setting with all those strikeouts. You know, teams want guys to play good defensively, but when you're I think now with how baseball's played, the stigma, as soon as you're 31, you're considered ancient in this game, and it's harder to get contracts. You know, it's just not going to be that kind of money. Because like I can remember shit when Magglio Ordonez was like 38 years old. The Tigers gave him $15 million, you know, and it's just like you don't see those kind of deals anymore. Like Justin Turner and like whenever JD Martinez signed, they're like the outlier guys where they're still getting contracts in their late 30s like that because just the MLB doesn't do that like they used to anymore. But I don't know. I think Chapman's either going to be a Cub or a Blue Jay. Let's do one more. JD Martinez. Where do you think JD Martinez goes?
There's a lot of talks of him potentially coming to Detroit, especially with the DH spot open now with Cabrera gone. Obviously, you know, I don't know how flexible they want the DH spot to be. Listening to Tiger Talk with Dan Dickerson and Pat Caputo, more for Dan Dickerson.
More for Dan. I used to write the prospect list, you know, back in the 80s. Chris, you know how much minor league baseball I watch.
The guy proclaims to watch so much minor league baseball and all that, but he doesn't even know who the number 1 draft pick in 2023 was. Didn't even know who Paul Skeens was, but he watches so much minor league baseball and knows all the prospects. But anyway, and I think he changes his voice on purpose to make it sound more douchey. I don't think that's his actual voice.
He's douchey in general.
That's fair. But I think that I agree with Dan Dickerson and how it's like a real good fit here. I mean, it would kind of make a debacle if you got JD because you have a plethora of outfielders, and he would take that DH spot probably full time. Well, he would take it full time. So, I mean, I don't really know what they would do if they signed him. I mean, I think he would have way more of an impact than a Mark Canha would, considering JD Martinez has had loads more success. And not to mention, like, you know, he was around when Prince Fielder and Cabrera were here, and Victor. So, and like, you know, people always make fun of him for that notebook. He would like take notes and all. But he's just a student of the game, as Dickerson said. Like, I feel like he'd have a lot more impact on these young hitters than a Mark Canha would, and he's still productive. Almost a 900 OPS, 30 home runs, and 100 RBI. I can't say he did 30 in Detroit, but the power is still there. I mean, the
LA at night is no slouch. That marine layer
But whether he hits 30 here, I don't know. If he came to Detroit again, obviously the Dodgers lineup was a lot better than the Tigers. But you insert a guy like JD Martinez in, and you have a healthy Riley Green. Torque does what he does last year, and then you have Carey and JD. Like, that's pretty good. And if Colt Keith takes off, like, this team's starting to look a little scary in the middle. The team's starting to look pretty good.
They need to score like 150 more runs this year than they did last year.
Right.
And
But
adding 30 home runs wouldn't hurt.
yeah, and the thing is too, again, like I don't know how open they really want that DH spot. Like it's what it all comes down to, because like Harris loves giving Hinch versatility and all that. I don't know what they're looking at for the DH spot, because you'd really have to rotate probably Carey through there. Obviously, as a DH, you might want to sit Riley some games to protect him from himself in the outfield, so he doesn't dive for everything and get hurt. So,
I think if you give JD Martinez 110 games, that leaves you 52 games to rotate it through 5 guys. And I think that's perfectly fine, because if you took the average of a week at 110 games, I think that would leave you like 2 days a week where you could rotate that DH to like a Riley or a Carp.
And I just think like the fit is there. Like he's been to Detroit. He knows what the environment's like. He knows the people around Detroit, like the coaches and all that. It's like, this is like kind of like a match made in heaven. We opened up the
Imagine
DH
if he went back to Arizona.
Well, they signed Jock Peterson.
Yeah, but
so I don't know if they're gonna, because there were rumors that they were interested in JD, but them getting Jock Peterson, I doubt they go after him now.
Jim Bowden made a good point that Jock can't really hit lefties. So putting to platoon your DH between JD and Jock.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That ain't too bad.
It makes that lineup better, and another spot JD's familiar with the D-backs. Yeah. So
he hit like 28 home runs or 29 home runs with them that one year after the Tigers had traded him. It was fucking insane. The season that he had.
All right.
So we're cruising in on the 40-minute mark here. Is there anything that you wanted to add to this or talk about before we wrap this up?
I will just say that the Dodgers have had one crazy ass offseason. And if they don't win a World Series with this team, it'll be the biggest fail of all time. That's all I want to say.
Do you think the Dodgers are a guaranteed lock for the World Series with their past playoff performances?
Absolutely not.
I agree.
Absolutely not.
That Dodgers team is not as much of a lock as people think it is. It still has its flaws. You have a lot of guys that you're going to be relying on that, like James Outman, he was kind of crappy in the second half last year. You don't know how Yamamoto's going to be, his first year in the big leagues. You got James Paxton, whoop-de-doo. He's just a depth guy who gets hurt all the freaking time. So that doesn't really matter. You look at that team, like you got Freddie and Mookie are guaranteed locks, but Max, you don't know what Max Muncy's going to be, because Max Muncy's had a couple of up and down years. You might get Kershaw at the middle of the season. I don't know, man. Like, I don't think the Dodgers are that much of a, because remember last year, Dave Roberts had said they were going to win the World Series as long as everybody stayed healthy. You literally had MVP years out of Mookie and Freddie Freeman, like 2 of the best seasons you could possibly ask for. And they got swept by an 84-win team.
Yeah.
It's like you can't guarantee that this team that was over 100-win team, that this team that was no slouch last year, that had a good bullpen, an amazing offense, good defense, and they got swept by an 84-win team.
Even look at the year before the last year when they went into San Diego and lost too. They own them all regular season, so they're never a lock, regardless who they get. They're just never a lock. Postseason,
and adding Shohei's huge. Like you're adding a third MVP to the team, but the Dodgers could hit last year. That wasn't their issue. Their pitching never seems to be good enough in the postseason. Is Walker Buehler going to hold up? Is Dustin May ever going to be in the rotation again? Do you believe in Pepio?
Yeah, and Shohei's not going to be in there this year. He's just going to be hitting. So
the one thing I will say, and I'll give the Dodgers credit for, they have added like 10 fucking starters. So they have a backup to the backup. So I'll give them that. And the depth that they added was solid depth. So they're not coming in there like relying on Tony Gonsolin. Yeah, it was a decent of a pitcher as he is. They're not going in there relying on Clayton Kershaw to not go on the IL 3 times in a season. They added some talent and they did what they needed to do. Like, you look at the name and the rotations and everything, it's nice. Like Yamamoto, Walker Buehler, Tyler Glasnow. It's a nice upper end. But
so obviously with the offseason they had, they're probably going to be the winners of the offseason still, regardless of.
Yeah.
So who is your biggest loser of the offseason? Because I got one in mind.
That's hard to say for me because, like, the Marlins made the playoffs and didn't do shit this offseason. And, like, Jorge Soler is still out there. Like, a guy had 36 home runs last year. Baltimore has all this talent they could trade from and was the best team in their division last year, and they've done nothing. So it's like, it's between those two guys. Like, Baltimore should have did something by now.
I think you and I kind of talked about this the other day. I think for where the Phillies have been in the last 3 years, for you to stand pat and not strengthen your bullpen after what happened last year, when that team's really good in October and they play hard, like that's a massive loss. Right?
They should have got Hader.
I mean, you could Phil Maton still out there. You could have got Hector Neris. Like, there was so many bullpen pieces. That Ryan Thompson guy, and they just stood pat. I mean, clearly that was their crutch against the Diamondbacks.
But
so
one of the last thing I will say before we end this, you can't judge a Dave Dombrowski team to the trade deadline. You know this as well as I do. There's been times where he stood pat, where he thought he should add. He lets the first half play out. They might be a 3 or 4 game over 500 team. He always makes the move at the trade deadline to give them what they need to go try to win it all. He doesn't always do everything in the offseason.
That's fair. I just find it funny that it's like the same shit that we dealt with as on the Tigers. This fucking bullpens.
It's Scott Harris. Scott Harris, and I'll give Alavila credit for this too. Scott Harris and Alavila have built better bullpens in the last 4 years than the Tigers had in the last 30.
Yeah,
which is insane. Like, because they would have won 2 championships if they would have had bullpens.
You also have the right guy managing it too, though. Because Hinch knows what he's doing.
Hinch can definitely manage. All right, that's all I got. You got anything else?
Mm-hmm.
All right, appreciate everybody else for watching. We'll be back on here soon. I'll be back on here to talk about potential Tiger lineups, what I'm looking for in spring.
And to see if they do anything else before spring training starts. You never know. You never know. Maybe.
I kind of think they're done. I'd like JD, but I kind of think they're done. So, all right, guys. Appreciate you watching.